Welcome to your personalized deep dive. You're looking to explore the best games of 2024. Perfect timing with the holidays coming up. We've got a whole pile of articles and reviews ready to go, maybe even some of your personal notes,
Yeah,
and we're going to help you sift through it all.
exactly. We'll break it down, hit the highlights, maybe even spark some ideas for your next gaming adventure or for gifting.
Sounds like a plan. So today we're diving deep into GameSpot's best games of 2024 so far list. Seems like 2024 has been a year for both big hits and those under-the-radar gems, huh?
Yeah, it's a really cool mix. I mean, last year felt like it was all about the mega blockbusters, but 2024, it's celebrating a broader range of gaming experiences, which is great for everyone. And GameSpot's list definitely shows that variety.
And before we jump into the specifics, GameSpot sets a pretty high bar, right?
Oh yeah, they only include games they rate an 8 out of 10 or higher.
So we're talking about a curated list of quality games right off the bat. Speaking of quality, let's talk perfect scores. This year, 2 games snagged a perfect 10 out of 10 from GameSpot. Elden Ring, Shatter of the Erd Tree, and Metaphor Refantatio.
A perfect 10 from GameSpot. That's incredibly rare.
It's like spotting a unicorn.
Yeah.
So what makes these games so special that they earned those perfect scores?
Well, let's start with Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree. It's not just another expansion pack, it's a true expansion of the Elden Ring experience. They added a ton of new stuff, challenges, lore, a whole expanded world, while keeping everything that made the original game so fantastic.
So if you loved Elden Ring, you're probably already playing this one. But what about Metaphor Refantatio? It's from Atlas, the studio behind the Persona series, so
Yeah,
more of the same or something totally different.
this one's fascinating. GameSpot's calling it Atlas at their most creative. The review raves about the high fantasy adventure, the characters, the plot twists, and even the combat system. They actually said it's a testament to the power of fantasy done right.
Wow, that's high praise. They're not just saying it's good, they're saying it's defining a genre. I'm definitely adding that to my list. All right, let's switch gears a bit. What about some of those games that might be flying under the radar? Astrobot keeps popping up.
Astrobot is the full sequel to Astro's Playroom, that fun little free game that came with the PS5, remember?
Yeah, that was surprisingly great. I mean, it was basically a tech demo, but it was so charming and well made.
Right. So Team Asobi, the devs, they took all that and poured it into Astrobot. We're talking platforming, secrets galore, and the DualSense controller adds a whole other layer of immersion. It just sounds delightful.
Sounds perfect for when you need something lighthearted.
Mhm.
Okay, now for a game that's a little less family-friendly, Hades 2. It's still in early access, but it's already generating some serious Game of the Year buzz.
Supergent Games, the studio behind the first Hades, is known for quality, and this one is already getting rave reviews for its combat system, story, and visuals. They're expanding on what worked in the original Hades in all the right ways.
It's amazing that a game in early access is even in the running for Game of the Year. Speaking of contenders, Helldivers 2 is another one that caught my eye. They made a big shift going from top-down to third-person. Did that work out?
According to GameSpot, absolutely. They loved the action-packed gameplay, the level design, and the co-op focus. Apparently, it's a live service game done right, which is a tough thing to pull off these days.
That's what I keep hearing. Live service done right is key. All right, now for something potentially a bit niche, GameSpot called Thank Goodness You're Here, a 2-person tour de farce of delightful weirdness.
That sounds interesting.
I know, right? I'm intrigued, but maybe a little scared.
Well, the game leans heavily into British humor.
Ah, that explains it.
So yeah, it might not be for everyone. But what GameSpot loved was the game's commitment to its own unique brand of humor. Quirky, charming, and very, very weird.
So it's love it or hate it, but if you're into that kind of humor, it sounds like a winner. Now, looking at the list, there are a lot of highly rated Metroidvanias. Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown, Animal Well, Ultros. What do you think is driving this resurgence of the genre?
It's a great question. I think Metroidvanias offer such a satisfying mix of exploration and progression, those really tight gameplay loops. You gradually unlock new areas and abilities, and that sense of discovery just keeps you hooked.
Yeah, and each of these games brings something unique to the table. Like Prince of Persia has this gorgeous world and fluid combat, while Animal Well goes for a more surreal and atmospheric vibe. It's like the genre is constantly evolving, but staying true to its core.
You got it. And then there's Ultros, which throws in time loop mechanics and a psychedelic visual style. It shows how adaptable and creative the Metroidvania genre can be.
It's amazing to see how developers are pushing the boundaries of what a Metroidvania can be. Speaking of pushing boundaries, let's talk remakes. We've got Paper Mario, The Thousand Year Door, and Silent Hill 2, both given the remake treatment. Remakes can be hit or miss, so how did these two turn out?
Both seem to have been handled with a lot of care. The Paper Mario remake, for instance, it's not just a cash grab. They went all out with HD visuals, some quality of life improvements, and even a remix soundtrack. They really wanted to create a definitive version of this classic.
It's great to see developers putting that much love and attention into these remakes. Now, Silent Hill 2, that's a game with a huge legacy. Fans are really protective of it. Did Bloober Team manage to capture the essence of the original while updating it for today's players?
From the sounds of it, they absolutely did. GameSpot specifically calls out the sound design, which is so important in a horror game. They also praise the atmosphere, the attention to detail, and how they made the psychological horror even more effective. It sounds like a faithful remake that actually elevates the original.
That's impressive. Maybe 2024 is the year of the remake done right. All right, we've covered a ton of ground here. From sprawling open worlds to quirky British humor, perfect tens to reimagined classics.
And it's been an incredible year for games, that's for sure.
It really has. But before we move on to potential Game of the Year contenders and talk about your personal preferences, let's just take a second to appreciate the sheer diversity of this year's gaming landscape.
Absolutely. No matter what kind of gamer you are, there's something out there for you, which is what makes this year so exciting.
Exactly. So let's dive into that big question. Which of these amazing games has the potential to be crowned Game of the Year? And more importantly, which ones are perfect for you?
Okay, let's zero in on some games you might love. You're into story-driven games, right? Engaging characters. Bit of a challenge.
Yeah, you know me. Getting lost in a good story, connecting with the characters.
Yeah.
That's my jam. And a bit of a challenge is always fun as long as it's rewarding.
Gotcha. Well, based on that, I think Metaphor ReFantazio could be a real winner for you. It's gotten those rave reviews for its story and characters, and Atlas games are known for that challenging but stylish combat. Sounds right up your alley.
Honestly, Metaphor Fantasio has been tempting me ever
Yeah.
since we started talking about it. Anything else that might be a good fit?
Well, if you loved the first Hades, the sequel seems like a no-brainer. Hades 2. It takes everything that was great about the original and just builds on it. More world, more characters, more of that captivating gameplay.
Hades 2 is definitely on my radar. Supergiant Games rarely disappoints. And you know I'm a sucker for a good remake, so
Yeah.
anything on the list I should revisit, even if I played the originals.
You could definitely check out the Paper Mario, the Thousand Year Door remake. The original is a classic for a reason, and this remake, they really put in the effort. HD visuals, quality of life stuff, a remix soundtrack. They went all out to create a definitive version.
You had me at Paper Mario. That game holds a special place in my heart. Now, what about those Metroidvanias we were discussing? Any standouts I should prioritize?
I think Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown would be a great one for you. It's gotten praise for its world, the combat, and the overall tight design. Really captures the essence of the genre.
Prince of Persia,
Yeah.
The Lost Crown. Okay, you convinced me. That's going on the list. Now, I'm also up for trying things outside my usual comfort zone. Anything on here that might surprise me, something I wouldn't normally go for.
Ooh, that's a fun one. How about Lorelei and the Laser Eyes? It's a psychological horror puzzle game, super distinctive visual style, and people have been raving about its atmosphere and puzzles. Definitely a unique experience.
Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, huh? Okay, I'm intrigued. A little scared maybe, but intrigued. Horror isn't usually my thing, but I'm always up for a challenge. What about you? Any games on the list that really grabbed you personally?
One that surprised me was Balatro. It's a roguelite, but it mixes in poker and deck building mechanics, which is a combo I've never seen before. Reviews have been stellar, super deep, tons of replayability.
Balatro, interesting. I love when devs take a familiar concept and flip it on its head. I'll have to check that out. Okay, we've talked about a lot of great games, but there's one big question hanging out there. Game of the Year. With so many strong contenders, how do we even begin to choose?
The million-dollar question. It's tough, no doubt, but I think it comes down to a few key things. Innovation, impact, lasting appeal, which games push boundaries, which ones left a mark, and which ones will we still be talking about years from now.
That's a great framework. So, based on those criteria, which games do you think are in the running for Game of the Year? And which one would you personally pick as the winner?
Ooh, tough call. But if I had to pick one, I'd go with Metaphor ReFantazio for Game of the Year.
Metaphor ReFantazio is. What is it about this game that makes it stand out so much?
It's more than just a really well-made game, I mean, the visuals, the combat, the music, all top-notch. But GameSpot called it a testament to the power of fantasy, and I think that really sums it up.
I'm curious, how do you mean? What makes it more than just a fun game to play?
It's ambitious. There's real emotional depth. It's a game that's meant to transport you to another world, not just let you play in one. And from everything I've read, it succeeds on that front.
Wow, that's impressive. But what about some of the other contenders we've talked about? Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree, or Hades 2? They're both getting a ton of praise.
Oh, absolutely. They're incredible games for sure. But they're building on existing formulas, refining what we already know and love. Metaphor Refantasio, it feels like it's breaking new ground, pushing the boundaries of what a fantasy RPG can be.
So it's that innovation, that sense of pushing the genre forward that gives it the edge for you.
Exactly. And while innovation is huge, I think Metaphor Refantasio also delivers on those other aspects we talked about. Impact and lasting appeal. It's a game that sticks with you, that makes you think and want to talk about it with others.
Metaphor Refantasia, your game of the year pick.
Yeah.
I'm even more excited to play it now. But as we wrap up this deep dive, it's important to remember that Game of the Year is a subjective thing. What matters most is finding those games that really click with each of us personally.
So true. And with such a diverse and exciting year in gaming, there are tons of amazing experiences out there waiting to be discovered.
Well, that about does it for this deep dive into the best games of 2024. My Tupley list is way longer now, thanks to you.
It's been fun chatting with you about all these games.
And a big thanks to you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed this journey through the world of video games. We've covered a lot, but this is just the beginning. There's a whole universe of fantastic games out there. So get out there, explore, and most importantly, have fun.